A lot of behavioral patterns, which helped me understand myself. It helped me help others around me. And I had initially started off in the travel and tourism industry, which I slowly pivoted into the mental health industry because I was so curious about the structure. That's when I started studying. And after I started studying, I realized that um, it gave me much joy to help everyone in this world to heal. So thus now I'm here, helping each and every individual who passes my path to help them heal a little bit. So I think everyone's main struggle at some point in life has been certain forms of anxiety. Now, when I say anxiety, it's just such a complicated term. Like if I ask anyone out there that what is anxiety for them, we get, or if even if we Google it, like we'll get a list of mixed examples which differ from emotional to physical, and it just gets so confusing to actually understand what we're really going through when we actually sit and Google it or we speak to somebody else because everyone's anxiety is so different. The way it comes out, the way it's transpired, it's so different. The way it's manifested in everyone else is so different. And because of that, it gets a little confusing on how to actually, and most people use this word like deal with anxiety. So I think that's also another thing that I'm trying to change. The narrative that I'm trying to change is that we don't really need to deal with anxiety. We actually really need to just heal it from anxiety. So if we go into Google, we get like a mixed response. So what really is anxiety? So anxiety is basically a combination of just worrisome thoughts. It's a combination of worrisome thoughts, which, and the other fresh perspective of anxiety is that anxiety is not really painful. Now, when I say anxiety is not really painful, you might be like, hey, what are you saying? Because if I've experienced anxiety, I know that it is painful. Now, anxiety is created in our mind. So that comes from the brain. Now, when anxiety comes from our mind, it comes from the thought processes here in the brain. And we all know now, and we've seen a lot of these doctor shows to know that actually there is no pain sense in the mind, in the brain. Like even when you do like surgery, we actually only use anesthesia just for the scalp and the upper skull. But when we actually like hit the brain, there is no pain sensation. So why is anxiety so painful? Anxiety is painful because anxiety actually creates a thought process that is created by the feeling that you have. Now, the feelings that we have is actually stored in our body. Like if you ask, when you try and ask a child, be like, where are the feelings? Where are the feelings? We'll always, if we try and explain fear to a child, we'll say that, when your palms start to sweat, or when you try to explain nervousness to a child, you'll be like, when your stomach starts to rumble. So everything, all our feelings are actually neck down in our body. So our feelings are here in our heart, in our gut. The thought process is actually in the mind. Now, the creative part of this is that the more we grow up, the more we see life, sorry, the more we experience life, we actually have taken in a lot of awareness. And when we've taken in a lot of awareness, we also believe that, that's maturity, that is, growing up. We've taken in so much information that at some point our brain needs to give a justification to every feeling that we're feeling. And what is the most, the most natural thing for it to do? The most natural thing for the brain to do if there is a situation that's uncertain, our brain will try and find a reason to give you an explanation of what you should be doing or what it can be or how we should manage it. And we tend to resort to something known as worry. So, this loop of what your feelings are, your brain tries to justify it. So, this loop basically is what our anxious thoughts are, the anxious feelings are. Now, having said that, everybody would believe the fact that, yeah, we are growing up, we are getting aware, we are getting knowledge. So, why shouldn't we use that knowledge? Where, yes, you should be using that knowledge, but it's about how. And I think most of us have not learned the how we should be using that knowledge or how we should be, feeling that feeling. Because I think most of us also, while growing up, we've heard this term like, you know, make a decision with your mind, don't make a decision with your heart. Don't involve the heart in the process. Don't get emotional about this decision. So we've all been told not to be emotional. We've all grown up knowing that we shouldn't really be emotional in certain subjects. But the emotions are actually where your inner child is. The emotions or your body basically, your body has a score. It knows everything that you have experienced since birth, even in the womb, actually, as per research. So your body knows everything. So imagine if you got like bitten by a dog when you were like 1 or 2 years old. You're not going to remember that incident, but your body remembers that incident. The moment you see a dog, you will get a little scared. So, but you don't remember it. It's a feeling that's created. So your body keeps score. So any trauma, any abuse, any kind of interaction that wasn't pleasant, your body remembers it and your body gives you that feeling. Now what we do is we try and justify that feeling in the moment by our thoughts. And this is what we do. This, as I said, is the worry loop, the worry circle. Now, why do we actually jump to this thing of worrying? Why have we normalized it, or why have we adapted this kind of mechanism? Because worrying actually kind of makes us feel um, a little bit secure in that moment. Like, oh, I'm actively doing something about it. Because if I'm not doing something about it, then we feel silly about, not doing something about a terrifying incident or an uncertain situation. So what we do is that we start to think and we start to worry. And sometimes what happens is that when we worry about something and it doesn't happen, like the bad incident didn't happen for us, we feel like, oh, at least we've done something about it. So it's kind of like a dopamine hit that we get. So when we get that dopamine hit, we feel like, oh, because I worried, because I took some action, that bad thing didn't happen. Now it becomes something that that becomes a habit and we tend to use it again and again. Now, in this aspect, what happens is that we tend to use worrying as a mechanism. We kind of make this a tool, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, subconsciously, consciously, unconsciously. We tend to make that a part of us. And as I said, right, so worrying makes us always think about something in the future. So it's very like anxiety is very like future oriented. So depression is very like past oriented. You're depressed about the past, but you're anxious always about the future. Now, when you find yourself in an anxious state about something that's going to happen, what you need to understand is that you're actually worrying about how you're going to be feeling in that uncomfortable situation. And when coming back to what I said about feeling, so when you're worried about feeling, this thing would make me feel bad, or this thing would make me feel violated or upset. When you're worried about something that you're going to feel in the future, it's because you felt something similar in the past. So the feeling is actually the same. What we're just trying to do in the moment is control something that is really not in our control, which is the future. We're always trying to control something that's not in our control, and we feel like that, and that's when we sometimes feel defeated also, because we can't control everything in life, right? That's the whole that's the whole beauty of life. It's just so you can't predict what's going to happen. So what you are actually trying to do is stop yourself from feeling that pain, feeling that hurt, feeling that whatever the uncomfortable feeling is. But what we don't understand is we put so much pressure on ourselves to stop feeling it in the future rather than sitting and understanding where that pain actually came from. Why does my body recognize this pain? What am I going to do about this pain? So that's something about what anxiety healing is about. So if you know this, a certain subject is going to make you anxious, a certain situation is going to make you anxious. We need to actually sit and think about what the feeling is. Feeling is pain. Okay, I don't like pain. Why do I not like pain? When does it go? Having said that, I'm not going to say that it's oh so simple. There is a lot of hard work that goes into this process, and I would recommend doing it with a therapist. But just explaining the process at this point. So whenever you're anxious, it's always about what you have felt in the past. And if that is not healed, you're always going to find yourself in the same situation all the time. Because at this point you feel like you need to do something. So it gives you a sense of control. And who doesn't want control over their life, right? So at this point, I would say that we need to actually start involving awareness into the picture. And we are aware, mostly on a general basis. Like we have unconscious awareness and we have conscious awareness. Now, unconscious awareness is like you're breathing, but a conscious awareness is when you're meditating and you're like taking a breath in and taking a breath out. That is conscious awareness. So when you start adding conscious awareness into your life, that actually helps you be in a slight conscious awareness along with non-judgmental curiosity towards that awareness. So in other words, it's like, challenging, challenging what you know, challenging what you believe in. So when you start to like when we have patterns, we have like autopilot patterns. We do things that sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing. Like if you finish your food, you're going to take the plate and put it in the kitchen. Sometimes we don't even realize that we've done that. So these are patterns. So when you actually are conscious about your patterns and you sit and look at it from a non-judgmental view and question it, that's when you know more like behaviors about yourself. You have more details about yourself. And adding this formula into understanding where and when you get anxious. And when I'm talking about where and when you get anxious, I'm talking about that feeling aspect, where your feelings are coming from the past. So when you are in the present, awareness kind of pulls you back into the present. And when you use this technique of, pulling away from the future and coming back into the present, you will realize that you're not as anxious as you were. You're just trying to actually make sense of a certain situation. So this is something that I feel like has helped me and many of my clients, just starting to be aware of just that pattern. Just that why. Ask yourself that why. Why is this pain? Why does it feel so bad? What am I running away from? And speaking about what am I running away from, it kind of comes with a certain sense of um, victim mentality as well. So if I have to say that someone has grown up in probably an abusive family or an abusive household, that child, the childhood that person has had, they will only understand that this is the most normal thing. If they have grown up in an abusive household, they kind of normalize that until they become an adult and they actually see that there have been different styles of parenting out there. So at that point, when you feel like, oh, this is normal, this is what happens to me, this is how life is. And when I say victim here, I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just saying that sometimes we just normalize the life around us, the hardships around us. Because that inner child in you had normalized it, no matter what the pain is. The inner child would be like, oh, for me, it's bad luck. It always happens. For me, I would never, this is the way the situation is. For me, it's always like that. You know, I won't be able to do that. She can, but I can't. He can, but I can't. So we have kind of normalized something, the lack of something, because we have received it in the past. So that is the inner child. That is the inner child speaking. But as we become adults, we need to start to challenge that thought process. The more we tend to challenge that thought process, the more the anxious loop, the anxiety loop, the thought and the feeling and the thought and the feeling, that kind of gets like, we can shake it up a little bit. That kind of helps us out. The process kind of helps us out in understanding that, do I really need to worry about this? If I worry about this, what is really going to happen? So this is one of the main things about the healing process. So if you actually go down and sit, I mean, you can try and do it on your own, but eventually I would recommend, seeing a professional. But when you actually sit down and question, what is the feeling that I'm feeling when I'm anxious? What is the control I'm trying to bring into the situation when I'm anxious? Because our brain is a meaning making machine. It can put out numerous thoughts over there. But if you don't question, when I bring the awareness aspect of it, if you don't question why is this happening, you are going to be your thoughts. You are going to be anxious. So the whole point of anxiety is to warn you about something. Being anxious is being in the fight or flight situation. Now, when it is in the fight or flight situation, it is a survival tactic. So when we have to survive, we have also, as I said, we have been brought up in a culture that says, use your mind, use your brain, be smart, don't make an emotional decision. So we have learned to numb all of this down. So what does this put us in? It just puts us into a loop. Okay, I'll worry, till that incident happens. Either it happens or doesn't happen. We deal with it. We don't deal with it. We move on. And then again, a new anxious situation happens. And again, we'll worry. So as I said, if the bad situation didn't happen, it's kind of like a dopamine hit within us. We're like, oh, I worried about it. I tried to do something about it and it didn't happen. So maybe I have control over the situation. Because I actually put in my work to worry, it did actually, whatever. I could manage that situation. Rather than if you just detach this aspect, detach the anxious thoughts, the meaning making machine, and question it from your feelings. That why does this hurt? Why do I, if I have to like speak on a stage, why am I getting anxious? What about it worries me? if in any situation. So this is something that really helps with anxiety, going into the past and connecting that feeling with what is going to happen in the future. So as I said, anxiety is very much future oriented, and worrying always makes us feel like if we are going to be solving something. But we always feel like if you're worrying, it's always about the future. But actually, every time you are worrying, and remember, hopefully you will remember this line. Every time you worry about something, you're actually thinking about something in the past. You might not remember exactly what, but you need to cling on to that feeling and understand that. I think I got question. So yeah, so I got a question about if an individual helps it helps to heal from their past traumas, but the mindset and external environment lead him or her to the same situation. So this does happen. I think our environment does play a major role, and I would say at this point sometimes triggers us also, to bring us back. So when somebody is trying to heal from their past trauma, that's also very subjective. What is healing in this case, right? If you are trying to heal from your past trauma, it needs to be done on an individual level. So even when I said, right, when you know what the pain is, or you know what the feeling is, it's not only knowing. There is a certain amount of acceptance that you need to go through as well. So I find this a lot with clients who have just started therapy as well. That the moment you start therapy and you figure out, oh, this is my problem or my struggle. What do I do? How do I get better? So it doesn't work like that, because for so many years you have been this person. You've had this trauma. So I think with trauma, the first thing is you need to accept it. You need to go into your inner child, go into your feelings, and actually just apologize, because actually just say sorry to that inner child, because you know what, that's what that child needs and that's what that child wants. And when I'm saying that's what the child needs and wants, I'm talking about you being that younger age person, you being that 7 year old kid. Because what is the main thing for us when we survive? Like, we have our parents, right, when we're born. But the moment we are held by our mother, that first instinct, and the only thing that we feel in that moment is safety. We all need, our main thing in life is to feel safe. That's why we choose the house that we choose. That's why we choose the schools that we choose. That's why we choose the routines that we choose, is because we actually need to feel safe from within. So if your environment is not making you safe, if the people around have a different mindset, that's when you need to start to challenge it. And as I said, it's a very individual process. So if I have answered your question, but if you can ask me more, because I might also need details on what have you been doing to feel that the past trauma. But let me elaborate more on this. So our major needs in life are, I mean, our first need in life is to feel safe. And when we feel safe, we feel secure, we feel loved. That's why we need safe space, like our house is a safe space, or the partnership we hold with our loved ones, that is a safe space, because we'll only be in a relationship with our partners is because they make us feel safe. After safe comes that form of love. We all have our basic um, senses, right? We have the sense, we can see, we can smell, we can taste, we can hear, we can feel. So all our senses also need something. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to take in smells. We want to eat to survive. We need to feel. That's the taking care part. That's the physical love aspect of it. So there are needs that we all have. So when we don't get these needs is also when we do get anxious. So when you are trying to heal, it has to be first on an individual level. So it has to first be like from within. If I have had, trauma, whatever it is, from abuse to, a loss to whatever it is, you need to heal from that so that now you are there. Your mind is the adult. Your feeling is that inner child. The adult is not trained to take care of your inner child. Rather than the adult also saying that, oh, no, 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 worry more. Oh, no, 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 worry more. Maybe this can happen. Maybe that can happen. Maybe things can get worse here. Maybe things can get worse there. Imagine that situation. Imagine if a child has come back from school and being like, oh, I'm in pain. And the mother says, oh, no, what if it's cancer? Oh, no, what if it's a tumor? Oh, no. The mother won't say that. The mother will try and take care of it. That's exactly what anxiety is. We have to train our thought process to actually take care of that feeling and take care of that inner child and love that inner child. So that is the basic need. That inner child needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to be loved, needs to be spoken to. So even our feelings have these basic senses that we need to acknowledge. But what we have done throughout life is starting to numb that, push it down so much that even when we try now to think about what am I really feeling, we just are so basic, like we're feeling good, we're feeling happy, we're feeling content. It's just very upper layers because we've numbed it for so many years that we cannot connect immediately. So healing takes that. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. But we actually need to use the brain, the mind, as the parent of the situation. We're not going to use the mind because we want what the world should see. Most of the time, what we do is we use our senses, like we want to be seen, but we want to be seen as successful, what the world assumes successful for us. Or we want to be heard because this is what the world wants from us. We don't connect with that inner child and be like, what do you want? How do we do this together? You know? So I hope I hope I answered something about that question. If you want to put up a follow up, I'm ready to answer that as well. Um, the other part about anxiety is not reality. As I said, right, anxiety is always about the future. So you're always putting yourself in a future tense. And when you're always putting yourself in a future tense, you kind of cut off from the present. You kind of cut yourself off from what we say as conscious awareness. So when you tend to when you pick this up as a mechanism, you tend to cut yourself off from conscious awareness. And that can be a very alarming thing in the future when you constantly are not aware about your surroundings. Because when you're constantly not aware about what your surrounding is or your environment is, you can tend to get more trauma along the way. You're getting more and more anxious along the way. When you do get aware, you're at least able to feel safe today in this moment. And that's where we need to start. We need to start feeling safe and we need to start feeling secure in this moment. So this is something that I believe that anxiety is not a reality. It is a future driven aspect. It is something that makes sure that our mind keeps on thinking about something in the future. And that, as I said, gives us a certain sense of control, which gives us a certain sense of a dopamine hit. Now, this also kind of becomes the language that we have grown up with. So if we have grown up in a household that, if someone has grown up from a household that are perfectionists, you're always going to have that inner voice that tells you that you need to be perfect. You're always going to be a victim to perfection. And if you are a victim to perfection, you're never really going to be satisfied at this point. That's why when I say, like, when you start getting awareness into the picture, when you start questioning it, when you start probably the next step taking risks about it, you are going to be able to understand that, hey, I have actually grown up with this. This is kind of a pattern. Because everything what we have seen as a child, we normalize that. And we even normalize that pain. So I'd seen this reel the other day where they said, like, when a child falls down and the child gets hurt, and the mother tells them that, no, 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 don't worry, nothing happened. It's all okay, you're fine, you're fine. The child kind of feels confused in that aspect because it knows what happened was not okay because it's feeling pain. The child is feeling a certain sense of pain. But the caretaker who the child loves and believes, that person is saying that everything is okay. So now the child is confused, like, should I believe me or should I believe them? So that's also a certain sense of disconnect that we have started to feel with our feelings. It has come in very early on. When we believe our caretakers to be, I mean, at this point, I'm not saying that it's all our parents' fault or our parents are wrong at this point, but we've all had different situations. So when we believe that, oh, I'm not like, this is not pain, we're ready to push that feeling down and take in more. We take in more and take in more and take in more. And at a certain age of 25, 30, 35, we just are burnt out taking in more. We just bottled everything up and now it's just exploding. That's why anger bursts also come this way because sometimes you just cannot take it anymore. Because you're always, taking in so much pain and then it just blows up. Because sometimes you're just not ready. That one last trigger would just blow everything up. So this is something like, when, as I said, so in that same example of the child falling down, when the child stops to think about its own pain and believes someone else, that's the same mechanism that we have started following for the world. So even at an adult age of like 25, 35, 40, we stop to think what we are really feeling and we want to hear what everyone else says about the situation or about us or about our life. So we are making decisions based on the environment around us rather than actually making decisions based on how we feel. Because we always feel like probably we don't deserve it. Probably we're not allowed to think because that is that victim mentality aspect that I spoke about. Because it has been normalized so much. So we feel like probably we don't. Maybe somebody else does, but I don't. Because it's never happened with me. I've never taken charge. And taking charge of your own life is very scary. And especially as an adult, it's very, very scary. But we need to start doing it. We need to start checking in with ourselves. And I'm sure very often you've heard this term like feel the feeling. So feel the feelings is that. Feel the feelings is sit down with yourself and actually experience what you are feeling in this moment. Bring conscious awareness in without any judgmental aspect towards it. See what the mind is coming up with. Because the mind, the byproduct of having a brain is having thoughts. You just need to pick and choose what works for you with that feeling and then continue life around it. So if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer it. Otherwise, I would be happy to close this segment as well. Okay. So basically, sorry, you were saying something?
No, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So basically, what I was saying with anxiety is the fact that we need to realize and we need to understand that these anxious thoughts that we're feeling, this loop that we're getting into, that loop needs to be first disconnected. Once we realize that we are anxious, we need to start to disconnect that loop. We need to keep the thoughts separate. We need to keep the feeling and acknowledge the feeling. That is step one. Having said that, there are so many things in this aspect which cannot be customized here. This is something that you need to do with a mental health professional. But let me just, what are some tips?
We got another question from CK.
Okay, so there is one, what are some of the techniques one can use to acquire self-awareness? So with self-awareness, however cliched that sounds, I am going to say that it starts with meditation. I think meditation could be the easy step towards it. But even if it's not, then I would next best one would be therapy. When you start therapy, so when you start meditating, you actually train your senses. So when the basic meditation is when you close your eyes and you concentrate on everything that you hear, you concentrate on a smell that you feel in the room, you concentrate on a taste that's going on in your mouth, you concentrate on how the clothes feel on your body. This is like the basic training for your mind to bring in awareness. So when you are in a anxious state, you can then use your basic training of awareness. So that's when it is self-awareness. And the second I would say is question everything. And like question your patterns, question the beliefs, question the values that you use. And most times you will get an answer that keeps you satisfied. So I always say this to my clients that if you get an answer that says because I'm supposed to, like, okay, why do you want to speak early in the evening? If your answer is because I'm supposed to, or because this is what I've been told, or this is how I do it, or because this is just if your answer is something like that, then definitely that's not your answer. If you can give logic attached to that answer, then it makes sense. So when you question yourself, you need to see where the answer lies on which spectrum. So if the response is like, this is just how it's done in our culture, or this is just how it is with us, or this is just how I'm supposed to do things, then it's not really your answer. And when it's not really your answer, you need to realize that at some point, your feelings have been invalidated towards that situation. And that's exactly like when I said, like the child falling and the mother saying, no, you're okay. The child's feelings were not validated. They were not able to acknowledge the fact that they were in pain or they got hurt. Just because, at that point, the mother also didn't want to deal with a meltdown, which was a very, very natural practice back then. It's just changing now with conscious parenting. So if your answer is that, then you realize that, this definitely something around my feeling is not validated here. So you have to question a lot of your patterns and a lot of your behaviors. Okay, your second question, the perfectionism element leads me to another question, if time allows. Any insights on how you can stay unaffected by?
Would you like me to read it loudly?
Yeah, you could.
Okay, so the second one, the perfectionism element leads me to another question, if it allows. Any insights on how to stay unaffected by comments or comparison with siblings and or those well settled in your peer group?
Okay. So, as I said, right, when you compare yourself, so I don't know if this comparison is coming from within or is it coming from someone else, but I'm going to assume at this point that the comparison comes from within. When you compare yourself to someone else, when you compare your successes with someone else, that is your element of your needs. As I said, we have our basic needs. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. That comes from our basic fundamental needs of being a human. But when we want to be seen and we want to be heard, we want it to be for others. And when you're doing something for others, you're never going to be satisfied. You're always going to be unsatisfied because you'll always find one person better than the other. And you'll always find another situation better than the other. You'll always find another reason within 5 days to be unhappy again because you're comparing yourself again and again. So as I said, this is a very individual journey. You need to start feeling okay with yourself. The moment you start feeling okay with yourself, your purpose is filled, and this is very, very related to what your purpose is. When your purpose starts to be filled, once you know who you are, once you accept who you are, once you figure out your purpose, you will be able to start feeling happy for others versus feeling bad. And as I said, we have come from a society back in the day that we don't look at somebody else's success as our success. We look at somebody else's success as our failure. We are trying to change that narrative, but it has to happen from within. And the only way it can happen from within is when you actually figure out who you are and what your purpose is, and however you need to be seen or heard or spoken to, how that makes you happy. So having situations out there is good to have a bar to know like what is happening, but it doesn't have to be apples to apples. It has to be for you. It has to be customized for you. And that is the beauty of life.